Hello and welcome again to another episode of Battle Ready. Drake Drummond for the WA. And today we thought we'd talk about how many armies are there in AoS?
20-something?
There's 20-something armies in AoS. Is there room for more?
Well...
So that's the question. Is there room for more? Because there are rumors of armies coming. One in particular we'll get to in a minute. But is that a good thing for the game?
I say yes.
Okay, why do you say that?
Because they just completely wiped out the beasts.
Yes, that's true. So by adding an army, they'll just be back to where they were in 3rd edition, right?
Yes, but I also think there's room because I feel like there's not a lot of stuff they could... I mean, Stormcast, they'll keep adding things forever.
Sure.
But I don't think there's a lot of stuff they could add to some of these other armies. Like...
Oh, I don't know. I think they'd be able to add waves and waves. That there are always going to be more orcs. There's always going to be more cities. There's always going to be more. They'll figure that stuff out.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I think they definitely could expand on armies, and we'll talk about that in an upcoming video. But what about adding something completely new? You think there's room?
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think there is room.
Yes.
But I'm actually not excited for new armies. Now, I'm not excited. I should say, I am excited for new things, right? Yeah. If they came out with a new army or something, that would be cool. But I'll tell you what gives me a little bit of pause. That's battle tomes. Because, in 2nd edition, not everybody got a battle tome.
Yep, poor Nurgle.
In 3rd edition, everybody did. But I mean, if you're Flesh Eater Courts, you got your battle tome like 6 months before a whole rules rewrite where you're going to get indexed. That's not great.
That's not great.
That's not great to spend all that money on a battle tome, get all that stuff, and then you are
getting indexed.
So I feel like what I would really like to see is that the very last battle tome comes out at least
a year,
at least, and probably I would like to see 18 months. I would like to see every battle tome have at least half the edition. Now that's a nice thing to want to ask for, but that's also, there's a lot of development, and I understand that they can't come out with every battle. I mean, they probably could, but realistically, they're not going to come out with every battle tome right off the bat like they will with the indexes.
Yeah.
So my fear is, as we add more armies, there's going to be more lag between battle tomes, and it's going to be more likely that some armies miss out. It's going to be more likely that some armies get their battle tome right at the very end.
Yeah.
It's like, is that great? Is that good? Should we be doing that? And I feel like, I don't know. So I guess I'm concerned that there would be more armies if they kept the current schedule. If they said, all right, we can add another army and we commit to getting all battle tomes out within the first 18 months. That'd be great. Or what if they said, we'll add more armies, we'll get the battle tomes out within the first 2 years, but we're going to a 4-year edition cycle. Or even the first 3 years, but we're going to a 4-year edition cycle. That way,
we have a year.
You have at least a year with your army, right? I would be okay with that. But as it is, anytime they announce a new army, I get a little bit nervous because they're not super great about planning battle tomes as it is, right? That said, what would we like to see as a new army? I'll tell you the one rumor that's out there. And who knows if it's true, right? There's been no confirmations. But the rumor is Chaos Dwarves.
Really?
So
we've seen them in several lore pieces.
Yeah, so they've been hinted at in the lore, right? The Horns of Hashut from Warcry are said to be part of the Chaos Dwarves.
The Hobgrots.
Hobgrots from the Cruel Boys trade with Chaos Dwarves. And so we know they're dwarves that have come to Chaos.
But we've never seen them march out to war.
Not in AoS. They were, many, many years ago, a Warhammer Fantasy Battle army, although sorta.
They don't really count.
They were only given rules and supplements, and you had most of their models were Forge World models, not Games Workshop models. So it was, I don't know if you could ever really count it as an army, but they did exist, and so the rumor is they're coming back. Who knows what their AoS incarnation will be, right? Yeah. I'm sure they'll be different from what they were.
Awesome, probably.
I'm sure, yeah, the modeling team has been knocking it out of the park with the way they model stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially in 3.0. Awesome.
But at least in
awesome.
Warhammer Fantasy Battles, they were supposed to be like evil industry.
Yeah.
So they would it was all smokestacks and slaves and shoveling coal into things and fire. So it's different than the high technology of like the Caradron, where they get their ether gold and then it's steampunky but not evil.
Yeah.
And then the Chaos Dwarves would be more evil. What else could be an army that they might introduce?
The Silent People.
Silent People is a good favorite. So Drake, what do you know of the Silent People?
All I know is from what you just told me that they're murder bug monsters.
Well, Drake told me that he wants a bug army, an insectoid army.
Yes.
And I'm like, hey, there just so happens to be some lore around the Silent People.
Like a whole bunch of centipedes and dragonflies.
Yeah, they don't. So the lore is just a sort of like not much is known about them. They were sleeping in Beastgrave and this and that. So they could be kind of anything, except that they are described as insectoid. So they could be like centipede stuff.
Or they could be like humanoid
Or they
insects.
could be grasshoppers. Or they could be humanoid
Which
insects.
would be so gross.
They could be all kinds of different
like
stuff.
humans with like mandible jaws.
Yeah, like stuff like that would be really cool.
That'd be so gross.
I think if I were, and stuff like that, I think that would be a destruction army.
Yeah.
Right?
Because destruction mainly focuses on like the almost natural causes.
Yeah, destruction is sort of like an earthquake or a hurricane, where they're just going to come in and they're going to level stuff, and then they're going to high five and move along and wait till it gets built back up again and be like, hey, there's another thing to kick down.
Get it, boys!
Yeah, they're the kid at the beach that just wants to kick down sandcastles.
Yeah.
They don't really want to build their own sandcastles, but they're just going from place to place kicking down sandcastles. Whereas Order wants to build the sandcastle.
Especially with Sylvaneth. They will kick down not good sandcastle to build a better sandcastle.
Sure, they want to build stuff, and all with different reasonings. Death, I think, also wants to build sandcastles, but out of bones.
Bone sandcastles.
Bone castles. And then Chaos wants to build sandcastles of evil, right? Where they have terrible things going on and hell pits and are breeding abominations. But it is an organization.
Yeah, they're all sandcastle makers, and the destruction's the only one that's kicking them down.
So, yeah, the destruction just wants to kick. So I think that would be sort of cool. We've talked before about like maybe an elemental army.
Yeah, but that one would be between order and destruction.
Yeah, and that would be sort of cool too. If you have an army that sort of straddles the line, that would be sort of interesting.
Well, it kind of feels like Seraphon straddles the line because they want to do their order because they want to go help people, but they also seem quite bestial, especially their coalesced versions.
Yeah, the coalesced are supposed to be in the lore. They're like they've been in the mortal realms too long, and they've gone a little bit feral.
Yeah, but they still follow the old plan.
Yeah, they're very anti-chaos. I feel like if you're anti-chaos, you sort of get lumped into Order, even if you would otherwise be in a different Grand Alliance.
Yeah, like Daughters of Cain.
Yeah, it's like Daughters of Cain.
Almost seem like their own alliance. Alliance of Cain.
The Alliance of Morathi Cain.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think those would be cool. I think that, right now we have a good number of Chaos armies.
Yep.
We have a ton of Order.
Oh, yeah.
And then we only have a few Death and a few Destruction. So I think if they were to add new armies, I would want to see something in there. Yeah, I would want to see a new Death army. I would really love to see a Death army that is anti-Nagash.
Yes, like they tried to do with Cthulhu.
Yeah, so Cthulhu is sort of an anti-Morathi, Daughters of Cain unit.
Yes.
But I would love to see a whole army of
anti-Nagash
guys.
Which they sort of set up with the one lady that Reckoner couldn't kill with the candle.
Sure. I mean, they've had little hints of stuff like that before, like Archon being destroyed. Maybe he gets reformed and gets, is anti-Nagash now. There's all kinds of different things you could go. But I think that would be cool. I think Silent People for Destruction would be really cool. But yeah, fleshing out those grand alliances, because right now Destruction
is kind of
and Nagash, they both Death and Destruction feel a little
tiny,
stilted.
Yeah.
It's like for Destruction, we all want Gorka Morka. We all like to fight, but are we green and like to fight,
or are we flesh-colored and like to fight,
or are we big ogres and like to fight, or are we really big and like to fight? So there's sort of one note.
Yeah.
And same thing with Nagash. It's like, well, we're follow Nagash because we're tortured spirits. Oh, well, we follow Nagash because we're bone constructs. Oh, well, we follow Nagash
because we're enslaved.
Because we're enslaved vampires, right? So it's like, it would be nice to have just a little more variety.
Yeah.
Even if they're...
With silent people, I would see something like, we like to fight people who are encroaching on the sacred lands of ants.
Right, well, you could have all kinds of things, right? You could have the silent people be like, you know what? Nature is how it's meant to be. So by building a city, you're destroying nature. And in that way, they'd almost be like quasi-aligned with the Sylvaneth, right? Because the Sylvaneth want to build, and they want to...
But they want their leaf empires.
Yes, they want to foster nature.
But in their own way.
But maybe the silent people
like,
want
no,
things...
that is evil.
Just...
primal.
Just, the way nature is, with no building up forces. by sentient beings. Yeah. So they could be a destruction army that way, and they're not super concerned about Gorka Morga, right?
Yeah. Maybe they follow, like, get all of their different representations of the Bad Moon.
Right.
Some think it's an egg sac, some think it's just a whole bunch of stuff.
And then same thing with the Anti-Nagash one, right? You could have somebody who's, has broken away somehow and is impervious to Nagash's powers, or maybe, when Nagash was defeated by Teclis, he lost a little bit of himself, and that's become sort of a different Nagash empire. Yeah. You can do all kinds of things, but it would be cool to have a little bit more flavor, because Order is all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
You go from Stormcast,
who are pretty much good guys,
all the way down to Daughters or Ideneth, who are doing
machines.
They're Order, but they're doing terrible stuff. To something in the middle that's like more like Caradron, who are like,
we will help you as long as you give us lots of money.
Or even Fire Slayers, right? Who will sort of ally with anybody, even Chaos, as long as there's Urgold.
In fact, in the Old General's Handbook that let you align with certain armies, they could align with Khorne.
Yep. And then same thing with Chaos. Chaos has a lot of different flavors right now as well. So, I think something in those veins. But again, a little nervous about increasing the number of battle tomes GW has to put out within 3 years. It's a little, I don't know if that's the way we want to go.
Since they're going to have to produce one less now that they've kicked out Beast, they could just add one army and then they'd be producing the same.
Right, but that means at least one army is going to get a battle tome like 6 months out.
Well,
and Cities even was not much longer or much earlier than that. So it's like, when you get a battle tome that close to the end of the edition,
it's a problem.
Especially as we move into 4th edition. I mean, everybody gets indexes, which is great.
Yes, that's nice.
I'm sure the indexes will have 1 or 2 battle formations, subfactions, right? But I'm sure when you get your battle tome, maybe you'll have 4.
Or 5.
Right? So while you're waiting for your battle tome, you're playing with
2 different kinds of armies.
Well, what would you call it? Like temporary rules with stop gaps. And those armies that have their battle tomes are playing with the full set.
Yeah.
So
the indexes are like the demos and the battle tomes are like the actual game.
Yeah, you can think of it that way. All right, well, let us know what you think in the comments. Is there room for more armies? Should more armies be added? And if so, what do you think that means for the battle tomes?
Silent people.
And if you do have an army you'd like to see, what is it? Pugs. This has been another episode of Battle Ready. Thanks so much for watching.